All right, guys. So Mehdi Hasan is back at it again. Just a couple of days ago, he sat down with Israeli historian Benny Morris. And this was a pretty long, extensive conversation that I'm sure you guys can go and find on YouTube if you want to watch the full thing. But I picked out this clip and another clip that we'll get to here in a minute. This first clip is Benny Morris giving a take that I think could only be given by somebody who is either wildly dishonest or somebody who hasn't really been paying attention over the last 9-10 months of this genocide in Gaza. So let's go ahead and hear from Benny Morris on the attacks on Gaza's healthcare system here.
I don't know if you can hold a prime minister responsible if a sergeant kills several unarmed people intentionally.
You don't think the Israeli Air Force bombing apartment buildings, refugee camps, mosques, cemeteries, hospitals, schools, universities, libraries?
Firstly, it hasn't bombed, as far as I know, hospitals. They have attacked...
Literally no expert agrees with you on that.
That's not true. What you're saying is not true. The only hospital which I remember being bombed was by a rocket fired by the Islamic Jihad by mistake. That's as far as I remember. Israel has raided hospitals.
Let
me talk. Israel has raided hospitals, but with infantry.
Let me ask you this question.
It's found Hamas people in there, Hamas headquarters, inside hospitals, under hospitals.
Actually, we've never seen the headquarters that Benjamin Netanyahu put a beautiful Bond movie video out for. We've never actually seen that from underneath Al-Shifa. It's been several months. We're still waiting for that.
Okay. So, a couple things wrong there with Benny Morris's analysis on this situation. So, number one, the situation that he was referring to, I believe, was the bombing of the Al-Ali hospital, right? Or the immediate complex surrounding the hospital. And if you guys remember, this was early on after October 7th, and there was a huge back and forth, a debate that was raging at the time over whether or not it was even conceivable that Israel would attack a hospital, right? And so there was this debate over whether or not it was an Israeli rocket or a PIJ rocket. Let's just put that aside for a second and recognize that since that happened, since that debate where people were furious at you for insinuating that Israel would attack a hospital, since that has occurred, Israel has utterly decimated the entirety of the healthcare system inside of Gaza. The notion, the idea that they are above attacking hospitals, or that the only instance of a hospital being attacked or bombed was with that specific situation, is ludicrous. It is completely detached from reality. So just a couple reminders here for y'all. This is from, I believe, the Washington Post here. Mapping the damage to Gaza's hospitals, battered, abandoned, and raided. Their subline here is, of 36 hospitals in Gaza, four have not been damaged by munitions, raided by the IDF, or gone out of service. 4 out of 36 total hospitals have not been attacked in some way, shape, or form, whether that's a bombing, whether that's an IDF raid, whether it's something else. Only 4 out of 36 have been even remotely spared. Now, keep in mind, even those 4 have not been spared in the sense that Israel has also been attacking aid workers. They have been attacking hospital workers, medical workers. They have been restricting the amount of medical aid that can get into Gaza. They have utterly decimated the entirety of the healthcare system inside of the Gaza Strip. So the idea that you can just brush this off, oh, they haven't bombed any hospitals. Oh, what fucking planet are you living on? What planet are you living on? Another one here from the Human Rights Watch organization. Unlawful Israeli hospital strike worsens Gaza health crisis. They say the Israeli military's repeated and apparently unlawful attacks on medical facilities, personnel, and transport are further destroying Gaza's healthcare system and should be investigated as war crimes. Concern about disproportionate attacks are magnified for hospitals. Even the threat of an attack or minor damage can have massive life or death implications for patients and caregivers. Guys, this is a human rights report that came out in November of 2023. We are now in August of 2024. We've almost come full circle, almost an entire year at this point since this report came out. So what has happened in the subsequent months after Human Rights Watch, a well-respected international human rights organization, came out with a report about Israeli war crimes and their attacks on the Gaza healthcare system? What has happened since then? Here's one other report here from CNN. Israel is blocking physicians with Palestinian heritage from even entering the Gaza Strip. That's not enough. Here we got another one. Israel is killing Gaza's medical workers. This doctor saw the results firsthand. Now, again, all of my sources are always linked down below if you guys want to go and read the entirety of the article. What I'll say about this is that I have seen countless, probably dozens at this point, of testimonies that have come out from either Western doctors or U.S. doctors who have gone to Gaza. And basically, it's unanimous that every single time I hear one of their testimonies, they come out of Gaza saying, and keep in mind, these are people who have gone to horrific war zones, disaster zones after, natural disasters and things like that. They come out of Gaza and pretty much unanimously say, this is the worst thing that I have ever seen in my entire life. There are some doctors who come out with reports of children who have been, entered into the hospital system there, who have single sniper bullets, sometimes multiple sniper bullets to the head and to the chest. Now, does a sniper bullet to the head and to the chest, does that seem like a valid military operation? Does that seem like some sort of a security operation on behalf of Israel? No, of course not. These are war crimes that are being documented. These are, in some cases, American doctors, in some cases, Jewish American doctors from all around the world who have gone to Gaza and have come out saying, this is by far the worst death, destruction, carnage that I have seen throughout my entire career, right? And so this is the kind of testimony that you can get from this nightmare situation that we have been fully enabling throughout the entirety of this. One more here. Quote, we cannot remain silent about what we saw U.S. doctors who volunteered in Gaza demand ceasefire in a letter to the White House. And of course, we've had the Joe Biden administration that, although verbally has been saying they support a ceasefire, has simultaneously been continuously sending billions and billions of dollars in weapons to Israel and using absolutely none of the leverage that the Biden administration has at his disposal in order to force Israel into a position where they are negotiating for a ceasefire in good faith. Benjamin Netanyahu has been sabotaging a ceasefire throughout the entirety of this process, and it's come to even the point where Joe Biden is seemingly recognizing that, and I'll follow up on that later in this video. Now we move on to this second clip that I pulled up here, because this was a member of the audience, somebody who is an expert on genocide, literally wrote the book on what is genocide. And he is going to speak up here from the audience and describe to Benny Morris exactly how what we are seeing in Gaza would absolutely constitute the crime of genocide.
I'm Martin Shaw, and I wrote a book called What is Genocide?
Oh, perfect person.
I wanted to bring Benny back to Gaza, because you said it's a war, and there's collateral damage, and that Hamas knew. And that may be true. But, I mean, the real point is that Israel knew, isn't it? That if you bend the rules of war so that 100 people can be killed for one militant, if you do that thousands and thousands of times with 2,000-pound bombs, you know that the whole of Gaza is going to be a ruin. You know that you're going to destroy that society. And that the only way we can understand that in an overall sense, it's not a series of war crimes. It is one big crime, and I think the name for that is genocide.
Absolutely.
You want to respond to that? Hold on, let him respond.
I think I've already made the point. The Hamas, when it attacked Israel on the 7th of October, knew that Israel would retaliate with bombing and knew that lots of Gazan civilians would die. They were hoping for that because that looks good on Western television images. But they say that killing a lot of Gaza civilians is good because they go to heaven. They become martyrs. So this is
Benny,
allowed.
Benny, can I ask you a question? Hold on.
Did I say something wrong?
No, I just want to follow your logic.
The Hamas knew that.
I just want to follow your logic. Your argument is Hamas knew that if they did this, we'd do a genocide, so we did a genocide.
Not genocide, no. You're misusing.
Like they knew that we would come and kill lots of people, so we did.
They knew that Israel would kill lots of Gazans.
They knew that Israel would kill lots of Gazans. Not a great
yes, they knew that. Going after the Hamas, they knew that lots of Gazan civilians would be killed, and they were happy with this because of international pressure which would result.
Okay, we're running out of time. I want to take the gentleman in the suit. Yes.
Benny Morris, you say that the ICC should issue an arrest warrant against the Israeli Prime Minister and the Israeli War Minister, Yoav Gallant. But on the 9th of October, they imposed a total siege on 2.3 million civilians in Gaza, depriving them of water, medicine, food. That is what they're accused of, starvation as a weapon of war, something that the Syrian and the Russian regimes were accused of. Do you condemn that?
Has anybody been died in Gaza of starvation?
Yes,
this is total nonsense.
Hold on.
The Israeli, you want me to answer?
Yes, I do.
You want me to answer?
But I want some evidence. You can't just say things that are false. I'm not going to let you say that.
The Israeli government, I think the ministers debated whether to cut off water, cut off electricity, etc., etc. They eventually resolved not to do that. And though lots of reporters have been saying, and the United Nations, that Gaza is on the verge of starvation, on the verge of famine, etc., etc., that has not happened.
Benny, how do you know that? How do you know that? Hold on. Stop heckling. How do you know that, Benny? And please,
I haven't
you don't
read
just have to
any
do it,
report of anyone dying of
There've
starvation.
been many reports.
I haven't read any.
So that makes it...
Okay, so, I mean, at this point, what more is there to discuss? I mean, it just seems like Benny Morris sort of like may have just shut his brain off after October 7th. I don't know if that's the situation that's been going on, but it is very well reported, extensively reported, that there have been deaths of starvation inside of Gaza. Now, the number of deaths that could be attributable to the other factors that are at play outside of direct bombings or IDF raids in certain places or whatever the case may be, that number is actually extremely difficult to calculate because Israel has been destroying the water infrastructure. They've been destroying the farmland. Again, they've destroyed a majority of the standing structures in Gaza, churches, schools, mosques, refugee camps, UN shelters, hospitals, everything in between. So it's actually difficult to calculate the amount of people who have died from sort of like tangential effects of this ongoing genocide. But the idea that you would get up there and confidently say that nobody has died from starvation. We have had, I don't know, dozens of reports that I've seen of children, innocent men, women who have died from starvation or the ongoing effects from not having adequate access to food and water and medical supplies. I mean, this is delusional, guys. I mean, this is completely detached from reality. You would have either again had to have been entirely dishonest, or you would have had to have been not paying attention over the last 9-10 months to come up with that sort of a statement. And you can literally see it in the audience reactions, with people laughing, with people covering their faces because of how ludicrous this kind of a claim is. But there's Benny Morris, right? I'm glad that he was willing, I guess, to sit down for this kind of a panel with somebody like Mehdi Hasan. But, I think as expected, Mehdi Hasan pretty easily, along with several members of the audience there, were able to dismantle some of his bullshit propaganda there. Now, to emphasize the point on genocide here, guys, this I was almost going to make into its own video because it's insane enough as it stands by itself. But I'll rope it into this because I don't know how much more of a rebuttal you could get to Benny Morris than this. Here's Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister in Israel, right? So this is not some random Israeli citizen. This is the finance minister of Israel. He says, it might be justified and moral. That's a quote, justified and moral, to cause 2 million Gazans to die of hunger, but the world won't let us. So I would like to get Benny Morris's response to this kind of a quote. Would he just brush it off and say, oh, well, Smotrich doesn't really matter in the broad scheme of things. He's just talking shit, whatever the case may be. Can we just remove ourselves from the immediacy? Like, I know to most viewers of my channel, seeing a quote like this from a guy like Bezalel Smotrich that I've covered extensively before on this channel, this probably won't be surprising to you guys, right? Because there's basically no low that Israel won't stoop to, right? Every single day we're getting a new low. But can we just remove ourselves from the situation and acknowledge how absolutely fucking insane and unhinged it is that we are close allies with a government whose top ministers say things like this out in the open? That they are unashamed to say it's actually moral and just for us to starve 2 million innocent people. 2 million innocent people. This is like a throwaway statement for a guy like Bezalel Smotrich. This isn't even something he thinks twice about. This is the country that we have been sending tens of billions of dollars in weaponry to. Tens of billions of dollars in weaponry to use as a part of a so-called self-defense mission, self-defense operation. Does this look like self-defense? Let's starve the pop. And by the way, guys, this goes way before October 7th, okay? We had Israeli officials who talked about putting Gazans on a diet when the Gaza Strip was under, effective military occupation and a blockade, and the government of Israel was restricting the amount of calories that would be allowed to the population of Gaza, right? Do we need to talk about the phrase mowing the grass that Israeli officials have used many times before? The idea that this is not a genocide, right? The idea that this has not been a long string of successive war crimes back to back to back, that there has not been the intentional collective punishment of Palestinian civilians. This is just ridiculous at this point. It's dishonest, it's a lie, it's ridiculous at this point. And by the way, the core argument of what it seemed like Benny Morris was saying there is that, well, Hamas knew that this would be Israel's response. I'm sorry, what? What? Is that a reasonable argument to you guys? Does that seem reasonable to you? Hamas knew. Listen, I'm not a fan of Hamas, but regardless of whether or not Hamas knew what Israel's response to October 7th would be, that does not give a green light for Israel to be complete fucking psychopaths. That doesn't give you the green light to do that. Oh, well, Hamas knew that we would engage in a genocide, so it's their fault, right? Hamas knew that we would engage in a genocide, so it's their fault that we did the genocide. In what world? In what world is that a reasonable argument? Now, we move on. This was something that was tweeted out here by Tamara. And just to give a little bit of an update here, guys, right? So this is based on a lot of reporting here from CNN and some of the visuals, as you can see here, the credits that they give. But this is a CNN report on exactly how successful the IDF has been in terms of defeating Hamas militarily, which, as I've been telling you guys for a long time now, does not look like something that they are going to be able to do, right? And this comes obviously as a time where we are seeing broader escalations with Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and now Iran as well, other elements in Iraq and Syria. And even though Israel cannot defeat Hamas on the battlefield, they're somehow trying to expand this into like 10 different other fronts at the same time. But this is the report from CNN. Only three of Hamas's 24 battalions have been destroyed by Israel's 9-month brutal offensive in Gaza, according to forensic analysis of Hamas units. The battered north of the Strip has seen significant resurgence. And this is something that we've seen over and over and over again, which is that Israel comes in, right, and they utterly destroy a certain portion of Gaza. They conquer it. They put their troops there to occupy it, and they declare victory over Hamas in that territory. Now, given the fact that they don't have any sort of long-term plan, right, then you have a couple of months later, a couple of weeks later, whatever it ends up being, Hamas resurges in that area that Israel claims that it has conquered or that it has moved on from, or whatever the case may be. And we've seen this over and over and over again, to the point where I don't know how you could possibly come to the conclusion, if you're an Israeli, citizen or official, if you're a U.S. citizen or official, how you could possibly come to the conclusion that Israel is going to be able to militarily defeat Hamas. They aren't. They're not going to. 3 out of the 24 battalions have been destroyed. Meanwhile, again, how much of Gaza has been destroyed in its totality? Israel has been much more successful at destroying civilian life in Gaza than they have been at destroying Hamas in Gaza. This is something that they have been a massive failure at over the last 9-10 months. Now, again, as all of this is going on, we also have this massive broader escalation with Iran, to the point where now, here from Axios, they say top U.S. general in the Middle East as U.S. and Israel prepare for possible Iran attack. Now, according to this reporting here from Barak Ravid, who tends to be pretty tapped in with the State Department and with Israeli security and military officials, he says that Iran may attack as soon as either today or tomorrow, right? So this is where we're at. Obviously, this is coming in the wake of the assassination, as you can see down here in this picture, of Ismail Haniyeh, the top Hamas political leader, that took place inside of Iran, apparently with an airstrike that was on the first day of the introduction of the newly elected Iranian president. So this is where we're at, guys. We have an endless spiral towards a potential broader war in the Middle East, to the point where now even the U.S. is deploying ships and fighter jets as Israel is bracing for an Iran attack. So we are basically just buckling ourselves in here for a regional war that may be instigated by this genocidal maniac in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, that the U.S. has co-signed essentially everything that he's done. We've given him the weapons to perpetuate this genocide in Gaza. We have supported him directly by striking the Houthis in Yemen, as they have been attempting to impose a sort of blockade on Israel to stop the genocide in Gaza. We have stood by Israel as they have been going with a tit-for-tat, back-and-forth escalation with Hezbollah on their northern border near Lebanon. And now we are even standing by them, sending troops to the region, sending our military assets and personnel to the region to defend them as Iran responds to Israel assassinating a top Hamas political leader inside of Iranian territory. I mean, how much of this shit are we supposed to put up with, guys? Do you guys think that the American public broadly is ready for another endless, pointless, deadly, bloodly war in the Middle East? Like, do you think that the American people are going to stand behind this? If anything, in the long run, this is going to be one of those things that we look back on, and we're going to say, this is partially what led to Israel's downfall. This is what led to the American people turning against Israel. not as being one of our allies, but as being essentially a rogue state that is hell-bent on dragging us in to fight its wars on its behalf. That's what we're witnessing right now. And the U.S. government is perfectly willing to go along with all of this. We're perfectly willing to go along with all of this. We would rather, in other words, get into a regional war with Hezbollah and the Houthis and elements in Iraq and Syria and Iran itself than we are willing to confront Israel, to end their genocide, to end their occupation, to end their illegal settlements, to end the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. This is how firmly we are tied at the hip with Israel. We're ready to pop off World War III for their sake, for the sake of Benjamin Netanyahu protecting his own ass, his own political future. Now, apparently Biden, this is report here number, 13,000 at this point, since October 7th, of Biden reportedly having a heated phone call with Benjamin Netanyahu behind the scenes. And he's pissed at Bibi this time, guys. Don't worry about it. Biden realized Netanyahu lied to him about hostage deal. A senior Biden administration official told Haaretz of Netanyahu's ungratefulness toward the U.S., noting that during the past two conversations between the PM and Biden have been difficult and tense. At one point, apparently, Biden said, "Stop bullshitting me. Stop bullshitting me." If only there had been people who had said that Benjamin Netanyahu was a total and complete fucking liar months ago. If only there had been people who had done that months and months and months ago, right? So apparently now Biden, 9-10 months into a genocide, is realizing, hey, this guy may not be entirely honest with me, right? He may actually be prioritizing continuing the genocide and expanding the war than he is prioritizing getting the hostages back to Israel and ending this. I mean, this is the most obvious thing I could have possibly imagined, but apparently it takes 9-10 months for Joe Biden. Maybe his brain is just that slow. But apparently now he's coming around, guys. He's coming around. He's finally going to stand up to Bibi. I'm sure of it, right? And finishing off here from Ryan Grimm in Dropsite News. So this is a follow-up. Semaphore broke this article here of the Wall Street Journal a couple months back, if you guys remember. They were leading the charge on this story that there were some members of UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which is tasked with protecting and safeguarding Palestinian refugees. They were leading the charge on a story that claimed that some members of UNRWA had something to do with October 7th or some connection with October 7th. And now we get this follow-up here. Again, if only there had been people who had predicted this months ago, right? Here's a quote. "The fact that the Israeli claims haven't been backed up by solid evidence doesn't mean that our reporting was inaccurate or misleading, that we have walked it back, or that there is a correctable error here," said the Wall Street Journal editor, Elena Cherney, who wrote this in an email. The headline here is, "Journal still can't confirm January story about UN agency for Palestinians." So in other words, guys, to boil this down, here we have the U.S. media, once again, willingly, intentionally lying on behalf of Israel on a story that Israel provided absolutely no evidence to back up, to justify. And what this story helped to perpetuate was the cutting off of aid, the cutting off of funding by the U.S. and many of our Western allies to what is one of, if not the only international organization that is capable of facilitating aid adequately throughout Gaza. So we cut funding to this vital aid organization based on unproven, no evidence provided allegations from the government of Israel, and the U.S. media helped to deliver this propaganda so that it would be effective and carry out their mission. So there you have it, guys. We got Mehdi Hasan, returning to the fold here a little bit, getting into a back and forth with Benny Morris. Benny Morris sort of revealing his ass to the entire world. We have the U.S. continuing to go along with these escalations with Iran, as Israel is desperately trying to get us into a regional war and to fight their battles for them. And it seems like we are in the doom spiral. We are officially in the doom spiral. Over the next couple of days, we'll have to see what Iran's retaliation to this is going to be. Are they going to be more measured, as they were the last time that Israel struck their embassy, and then they sort of, choreographed their response to that, and the U.S. and Israel and their allies sort of were able to intercept a lot of those incoming missiles and drones. Are they actually going to go for blood? Are they going to go for a more measured response? I guess that'll dictate a lot about how we move going forward here. But it seems like Israel is just itching at any opportunity to potentially expand this into a massive regional conflagration that directly drags in the United States. And it seems like the U.S. is perfectly willing to go head first. And
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying